If you've been gardening for any length of time, you've probably heard that leaf mold takes a year, maybe two, sometimes even longer. I believe that too. For years, I quietly piled up leaves in a forgotten corner and waited, hoping that one day they'd magically turn into that dark, crumbly, soil-like goodness we all love. But last season, I decided I was done waiting. I wanted leaf mold fast, not next year, not eventually. I wanted it in weeks, and after some experimenting, observing forest floors, and a little trial and error, I cracked it. I added one simple ingredient to my leaves, and everything changed. What normally takes years took weeks. Let me walk you through exactly what I did, why it works, and how you can do the same in your own garden, whether you're just starting out or you've been growing for decades. Before we dive into the shortcut, let's quickly remind ourselves why leaf mold is so valuable. Leaf mold isn't compost. It's better in some very specific ways. It doesn't feed plants directly like compost does, but it builds soil structure, improves water retention, supports beneficial fungi, and creates the perfect environment for roots to thrive. In dry climates, leaf mold acts like a sponge. In heavy soils, it loosens everything up. In sandy soils, it adds body and life. It's actually one of the closest things we can make to forest soil. And forests don't need fertilizer to thrive. The only real downside has always been time. Leaves are mostly carbon. They're dry, fibrous, and tough. Unlike kitchen scraps or fresh plant waste, they don't contain much nitrogen, and nitrogen is what fuels microbial activity. Without it, decomposition crawls along at a painfully slow pace. That's why piles of leaves can sit for years and still look, well, like piles of leaves. Nature solves this problem on the forest floor by constantly adding small amounts of nitrogen, fallen green material, animal droppings, moisture, and microbial life. I simply decided to copy that system. The ingredient I added was fresh green grass clippings. That's it. Grass clippings are rich in nitrogen, full of moisture, and already packed with active microbes. When you combine them with shredded leaves, you instantly wake up the decomposition process. This one addition shifts leaf mold from a slow fungal process into a fast, balanced breakdown that still preserves all the benefits leaf mold is known for. The key is not to turn your pile into compost, but to gently supercharge the leaf mold process. The biggest mistake people make with leaf mold is leaving the leaves whole. Whole leaves mat together, repel water, and break down unevenly. I shredded mine first, and this alone speeds things up dramatically. You don't need fancy equipment. I just ran a lawnmower over dry leaves, collecting them as I went. The result was this fluffy, shredded leaf material that microbes could actually access, Once shredded, I lightly dampened the leaves so they were moist but not dripping. If you squeeze a handful, it should feel like a wrung-out sponge. This is where most people go wrong and accidentally make compost instead of leaf mold. I added grass clippings in thin layers, not thick slabs. For every large pile of shredded leaves, I added a light scattering of fresh grass, just enough to introduce nitrogen without overwhelming the leaves. Think of it as seasoning, not the main ingredient. The pile was then gently mixed, not aggressively turned. I wanted contact between materials, but I didn't want to destroy the fungal network that would form later. Within days, the pile warmed slightly, not hot like compost, but warm enough to tell me life was happening. Moisture is just as important as nitrogen. Dry leaves don't break down. Water activates microbes and fungi, allowing them to move, feed, and multiply. So, I checked my pile every few days. If the top started drying out, I watered lightly. Not soaked, not flooded, just moist. This consistent moisture alone, honestly, shaved months off the process. After 7 days, the change was already obvious. The leaves were darker, softer, and starting to clump together. The sharp, papery texture was gone. When I dug my hands in, the pile smelled earthy, not sour, not rotten, but like a forest after rain. That smell is your best indicator. If it smells bad, you've added too much nitrogen or too much water. If it smells neutral to earthy, you're on the right track. By week 2, the pile had visibly shrunk. Leaves were losing their identity, and fungal threads began appearing throughout the material. This is exactly what you want with leaf mold. I turned the pile once during this phase, gently lifting and folding it rather than flipping aggressively. This redistributed moisture and microbes without breaking the structure. By week 3, what I had was unmistakable young leaf mold. Not fully finished but absolutely usable. In about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on temperature and moisture, the material became dark, crumbly, and sponge-like. It held water beautifully and blended seamlessly into soil. At this stage, I used it as a mulch around vegetables, mixed it into garden beds, and added it to potting mixes. Plants responded almost immediately with stronger growth and better moisture tolerance. Even if you let it age longer, you already have something valuable far sooner than traditional methods allow. Some gardeners worry that adding nitrogen means it's no longer leaf mold, but here's the truth. Forests constantly receive nitrogen inputs. The difference is balance. By keeping leaves as the dominant material and using grass clippings sparingly, the process remains fungal-driven, not bacterial like hot compost. The end result behaves like leaf mold, not compost, and your soil will tell you the difference. If you add too much grass, the pile can go slimy and smell bad. If you let it dry out, everything stalls. And, if you leave leaves whole, decomposition slows to a crawl. The sweet spot is shredded leaves, light nitrogen, steady moisture, and patience measured in weeks, not years. So, this approach actually turns what might seem like a long-term project into something you can do each season. You can make leaf mold right in that window between harvest and planting. Basically, you get to recycle those autumn leaves, and then, feed your spring garden with them. It's a pretty neat cycle. Instead of relying on those bagged soil conditioners from the store, you start producing your own, right at home. And honestly, once you give it a try, you'll never want to go back to waiting years for results. Gardening doesn't always have to be slow to be natural. Sometimes, all it really takes is understanding how nature works and just giving it a gentle nudge in the right direction. If this method helped you see leaf mold differently, well, just imagine what else we could unlock by paying a little closer attention to our soil. If you enjoyed this story and want more practical, real-world gardening knowledge, go ahead and subscribe to Soil Stories, share this with a fellow gardener, and remember to keep growing smarter, not harder.